David Lawal is a distinguished lecturer, author, poet, and educator. He is also a seasoned speaker and the president of Free Large and Full Global, a Christian organization where he mentors thousands of young people globally. With a passion for inspiring growth and transformation, David has authored and co-authored several Christian and self-help books, leaving a lasting impact on readers and audiences alike.
So let's make welcome Mr. David Lawa as he'll be taking us um, on what we call reinventing learning for a changing world. Guys, are you ready? This man, no problem. Let me keep the rest. So, Mr. David Lawal, thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and we are so grateful to have you. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Akinduru. I'm actually very excited to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So thank you very much. I'm actually excited to be here this afternoon, and you know, given the opportunity to speak on reinventing learning for a changing world, I want to use this opportunity to appreciate you and also appreciate Mr. Victor for the wonderful and excellent teaching. So briefly, reinventing learning for a changing world. I'll be touching some few points. The changing world is the first point I'll be touching. The markers and drivers of change. What are the markers and drivers of change? What are the pointers, the things that actually influence change in our world? Changing systems. What are the changing? What are the systems that are already there, and how are they changing? And okay, another point is the people in a changing world. And finally, the new normal of learning. The new normal of learning. So I like I was introduced. I'm an author. That means I write a lot, and which also means I read a lot. So I'll be reading quite a lot, and I hope I'll be able to, put my words in relatable stories that will actually help to better full understanding of the things I'm going to be saying this afternoon. All right, so I'm sure we all remember the story of this young Malawian, William Kamkwamba, the Malawian boy who harnessed the wind. Has anybody seen that movie before?
Yes, sir. Yes,
The
sir.
boy who harnessed the wind, right? Okay, so William had very, very poor parents, was living in a very poor community that was exploited, plagued with droughts, consistent drought. They were agrarians, they were farmers, but their community was always plagued with droughts. And they lived in an exploited environment. And his parents couldn't even afford his education, so William had to drop out from school. But William was a learner. A very avid learner for that matter. And he stirred his creative mind, and which is what true learning should do. Learning should actually stir our creative mind, make us better, change us, and make us think better and innovate better. So that year, when the drought hit Williams's village again, William remembered he had seen from a particular old book in his library that a wind vane could actually generate energy. A windmill could generate electricity. So what did William begin to do? He went all around, began to collect scrap metals from broken tractors, and to the point he even broke his father's bicycle so that he could use it to make a wheel for the windmill, right? Okay. So I remember in that movie, somebody teasingly asked Williams, he said, are you building a helicopter? He was actually mocking him, right? Are you building a helicopter? And do you know what Williams's answer was? He said, I am building tomorrow. William said, I'm building tomorrow. So long story short, one afternoon, after many failed attempts, failed trials, the blades began to spin, the light bulbs flickered, and the pump drew water for the entire community. William harnessed the wind, and he harnessed the power of the wind, and the entire community depended on his invention. The entire community of farmers had to depend on William's invention to stop the drought and for them to actually harvest the crop. it's actually a very beautiful story. You should see the movie if you have not yet seen the movie, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. I think it's free on YouTube. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. All right, so you see, William's story is a typical life illustration of the things I will have to say this afternoon, from how the world has changed and the markers of this change. What are the pointers that we can see, or what are the pointers that we can look at, about change, and how learning, or true learning, is beyond the traditional class system. How true learning has grown beyond the traditional class system. William did not even have, his parents did not even have money for him to further his education, but there were people in that community who had, all the money to get their child to be educated. I mean, the traditional kind of education, but none of them could actually give electricity to the community, which William did, who was actually a dropout. And that's why we see even today there are many dropouts who are doing excellently well, beautifully well in our world, innovating, creating. All right, so the first thing I'm going to be pointing out is the changing world. What's the changing world? How has our world changed over time? So I'm going to be mentioning three major eras of humanity, three major eras, how we have transitioned. Sorry, my mic. I don't know what happened to my mic. So you may be hearing other voices, from external voices. So how we have transitioned as humans. The first age that we've transitioned from is the agrarian age. The agrarian age, which was, basically agricultural driven, farming driven, and the people, or the class of people in that age, were the feudal lords. These were the people who owned large farmlands, who owned, large lands, large farmlands. And then we also had slaves or peasants who worked those farms for little stipends so that they could earn something and, and feed themselves. And the source of wealth in that age was land ownership. The source of wealth in that age was land ownership. And I think that ran all the way, from human history, from the origins of human history, all to the 18th century, right? And then we have the industrial age, which was, majorly driven by the industrial revolution around the 18th century to the 20th centuries. So, and the people in that era, the class of people in that era, we had the capitalists, we also have the industrialists. These were people who formerly they were the owners of these large farms. So, but then they had made money through the produce that they had, selling slaves and all of that. And because of that, they now have the money you know, to open industries, buy machineries, to run factories, right? And then the other class of people during that era, or during that age, are the civil servants and factory workers. Civil servants, factory workers. Now, the source of wealth during that time was capital and production. Capital and production. So this era, the industrial age, or the industrial era, was the time that was the period as well where formal, or the class system of education, was invented. Why? Because farmers, people who work the farm, or the peasants, slaves that work the farm, the knowledge that was needed to work in the industry is different altogether now. So they needed to train them. They needed to, create a curriculum of training whereby, okay, now you're leaving the farm and into the industry. You need to learn how to operate machines, how to get your figures right for money, accounting, and all of that. So that led to the creation of the class system of education, which the world followed for a very long time, right? So now we have also moved to the third age, which is the information age. Although there is a fourth age, which is already being speculated, but let's stop at the third age, the information age. Now, the class of people in the information age are innovators and entrepreneurs. Innovators, entrepreneurs. These are the class of people in this information age, innovators, entrepreneurs. And then we have the service workers, which is not far-fetched from civil servants. All right, so the servants who were once, in the farms, have been educated now, given some form of formal education to work the factories, right? And then this system of education has also continued for over a period of time after the 20th century, and up to now. We are now in the information age, although speculatively now we are moving slowly or gradually into the fourth age, which is called the imagination age. which is also called AI, imagination age, which will be driven majorly by creativity, emotional intelligence, and imagination. But let's stay on information age, right? So the major source of wealth in information age, one is data and ideas. Data and ideas. Right? Remember, we said the agrarian age, the source of wealth is land ownership. The industrial age, the source of wealth is capital and production. But the third age, which is the information age, the source of wealth is data and ideas. Data and ideas. Now, what are the markers and drivers of change, of this change? What are the markers and drivers of change? So while there are different markers for social economic change, like technology is one of the markers for social or economic change, markers just means what are the reasons why change needs to, why change should be effected. So resources needs, the need for resources may stir certain change. Right? Take for example the story of Williams. Williams, their community needed water. They needed access to water in the time of drought, and this resource need, stirred in him innovation, stirred his creativity, which enabled him to, harness the wind. All right. So cultural and political shifts as well can lead to change. Urbanization as well leads to change, but on a personal or individual level, which is what concerns us, which is a basic marker for learning. On a personal or individual basis, I believe that esteem, which includes self-respect and dignity, are one of the markers that drive for change. Now, when a person begins to feel that they need to be respected more, when a person feels their dignity is threatened, sometimes it can stir now this need for personal development. It can stir this need for self-development, personal development, and also the need for self-actualization, which means freedom, which includes freedom and independence. When the people feel that they are being subjugated, when the person also feels they are being subjugated, held back, there may be this, urgency in them to drive for a change, to contend for a change, right? So all of these are important markers for change personally within us. Now, these needs are deep motivations that allow individuals and societies to flourish. This is in line with a research by Abraham Maslow's that's in his hierarchy of needs theory. It says one of the upper tier human desires, one of the upper tier human desires and needs, which is beyond we have basic needs, which are materialistic, essentially materialistic: clothing, food, shelter. Those are, basic needs. They are materialistic, but there are more, deeper needs, which are psychological and philosophical. So the philosophical and psychological needs of man are those that are classed under our self-esteem, which is respect and dignity, and the sense of self-actualization, freedom and independence. So these are deep or more deeper inner markers that create a demand for self-empowerment. Which self-learning is a crucial step. Self-learning is a crucial step in self-empowerment. I teach this to a number of my mentees, how it is important that a person begins to have the mindset of self-empowerment. So what are changing systems? Now I'll just changing systems. I'll point out. I'll give some points here. The world is shifting from a fixed pattern of doing things and embracing dynamism. So there's always been a fixed pattern of doing things. Even in education, education is fixed. There is a pattern. The job environment, there is a pattern. It's very fixed. But then the world is shifting from this fixed pattern and embracing a more dynamic pattern of doing things. And this flexibility is traveling all the way into how we learn, right? I told you in the industrial age, they had to create a system, a curriculum, and it is within the boundaries of this curriculum that you could learn. So, and no matter how far you want to go, take for example somebody who is in engineering. No matter how far that person wants to go in engineering, he spec that's PhD, right? That's the highest degree you could earn as a then you work on research and all of that subsequently. But the height of your education in engineering is that once you're a doctor, you're a PhD holder, that's it. So there's a fixed pattern of learning, which the entire world, which it's a curriculum based kind of, learning. So it's the system is so fixed that if you understand the system, you can easily navigate it, right? That's why you find some PhD holders who are not innovators. You find PhD holders who are not entrepreneurs. You find PhD holders who are not creative. Why? Because they've understood that the system itself is stereotypical. The system itself is rigid. And once you know how to maneuver your way, I mean, for many of us who attended school, we know how we maneuvered our way through school, and you got a very good degree, have a very good grade. But then you now get to find out that in life demands more than just a good certificate. Life demands more from us now than just having good grades. Now, this was how it was in the world before. How it was in the world before, even in Nigeria as a country where I am, I mean, after graduation, you get to have a good job. There are people who are lined up to companies who are lined up to give you, employment. Even the federal government may even give you scholarships. People come, individuals come and give you scholarship. But the world is getting dynamic. How things, how learning happens now is dynamic. Now, so this flexibility is traveling into the way we learn, into how we skill up or into how we upskill, and ultimately it plays a role in it's okay into how we now take up new roles, how we take up new roles and take up new challenges. So we have a fixed system, and now we have also a dynamic system. Number 2 point I want to put out here is the world is changing fast, right? So the world is shifting from a fixed pattern to a dynamic pattern. Also, the world is changing very, very fast. And what's driving this change, as I mentioned before, is data and information. So what is driving true learning now, what is driving education now, is data and information, and all of which is at our fingertips, right? I mean, you can access numerous amounts of data and information as quickly as your fingertips, or how, like, as close to being at your fingertips, right? Now, competency in this dynamic system is no longer the result of a degree. This does not negate the importance of having a good education, a good degree, right? So, but competency now, in those days, you are competent to the extent of how well read you are, right? And how good your grade is. So they believe that if you have a good grade, went to school, you're competent. But competency is shifting from that system, and is shifting into beyond grades now. So competency now is what data or what information do you have access to, and how can you manipulate this data to drive innovation, right? So you have access to data, you have access to information. That's competency at a degree, at a level. Now, how can you manipulate this data or this information you have to drive innovation, to drive creativity, right? That's the hallmark of competency now in our world. All right. Now, the third point here is the curriculum driven and class based system of learning, which is fixed, cannot sustain the massive transitioning that is happening. There's a massive transitioning happening in realms. There's a massive transitioning happening right now, and the curriculum-based, class-based system, cannot sustain the massive transitioning that's happening currently. So gradually, there's a dynamic shift to how we are learning, and this is what is driving innovation and creativity. The whole school system is gradually collapsing, right? The old system, the curriculum system, is gradually collapsing. Now, the people in a changing world, who are the people in this changing world? So as we shift into a dynamic system, three sets of people you'll find. There are three sets of people you find. The first set of people is those who are enacting change, those who are bringing about the change, those who are causing the change. I call them the system movers. System movers, these are the creators, they are the innovators. They are they are creating new systems. that disrupt the old and outdated ones. They are creating new systems that are disrupting the old systems and the outdated systems. And strangely or surprisingly, this is just 1% of man's population. The entire population of humanity is just 1% of the entire population of man that is within this category of people in a changing world. Now, I've been pointing out, the people who live in each of those eras. The first era I mentioned, I said we had, the feudal lords who owned farms, and we had peasants and slaves who worked the farms. I said in the industrial age we had in the industrial age we have capitalists, industrialists, civil servants, and factory workers. Now, the thing about the information age is, as the information age is changing, the people, as it's getting more dynamic, people as well are changing. The people in this system are changing. So the first level of people I mentioned in this system are those who are creating change. They are disrupting the systems. Take, for example, someone like Elon Musk. There were cars who were running on fuel, but now we have cars that are running on electricity. And recently I saw a guy from one of these African countries who harnessed the power of the sun, right, to make an engine that runs on like solar, that runs on the sun, the power of the sun. So it's still a work in progress, but I mean, they are innovators, inventors, and surprisingly, this guy did not have a formal education, right? He's just a roadside mechanic who began to think creatively, who began to study, who began to read, who began to self-learn and self-educate himself. And is doing something massively that is going to disrupt the system if he eventually succeeds at what he's doing. All right, the second category of people in a changing world is those who are reacting to change, right? The people who are reacting to change. Now, they are not, although they are not creating new systems, these are the set of people who are learning to flow and work within the new system. They are learning to flow and work with the new systems that are being created, right? So these people, they play a major role in driving social and economic advancements. The population of the people here is larger than the first people or than the first group, yet is a lot fewer than the last group. So there is a last group, right? And that group is more. That's where the masses are. That's where a lot of people are. The first group are the innovators. They are the creators. They are the people disrupting systems. They are the people creating new systems, innovating, creating. While the people who are reacting to this change are the people who are learning the new systems, learning to flow and work within the new system. So you see some people who somebody created YouTube, right? Somebody created Google Meet, right? Somebody created Facebook. Somebody have all of these innovations. There's a brain behind WhatsApp. There's a brain behind Facebook. There's a brain behind YouTube. There's a creative mind behind it. But then there are some people who have been able to harness or have been able to flow and work with these systems that are created, and they are also major players driving both social and economic advancement, right? So I saw recently one of the, I think I saw a news recently, I don't know how true it is. There's this guy on TikTok. I don't know, I can't remember, but he's a character that gives, he just Kaby Lame on TikTok. And then I saw a post about him that he earns more money from TikTok than the person who created TikTok, right? So I don't know how authentic that what are they calling it, that analysis is, but I mean, this is someone, he did not create TikTok. He's not the brain behind TikTok, but then he has been able to harness that system and drive both for social and economic advancement, right? So the last group is the class of many people. This consists of a whole lot of people. So I call them the onlookers. I call them the traditional and stereotypical people. I call them the gatekeepers, right? So they are the gatekeepers because they are stuck to the old system. They are stuck to the traditional system of doing things, and they are failing to adopt and adapt to change. They are both failing to adopt and adapt to change. So these are the last class of people. They do not they are still stuck to the traditional system, the traditional ways of doing things. They are stuck to the traditional ways of learning. So they want to go to all their mindset is I finish school, get a job, and get a mortgage. After I get mortgage, take some loans. I can get loan, build a house, buy a car, and then pension. And after pension, I just rest with the Lord, right? So it's a traditional mindset, it's a traditional system. They are not learning how to, they don't have the creative mind, they don't have the innovative mind. They're not thinking beyond what is. They are not thinking, they're not seeing outside of the system. They are so fixed within the system that it has shut down their creative mind, it has shut down their innovative mind, right? Now, there's a new normal to learning. There is a new normal to learning. The old school system, like I said, is fixed and undynamic. Now, in the new way of learning, you are either, number one, you are either learning to disrupt old systems or you are creating new systems. All right. So there are two categories. There are people who are learning to disrupt the old system or to even create entirely new systems. So these are people that learning for them is beyond the class. Traditional learning is good to a degree. I'm not saying it's not fine, right? But they are learning beyond class. They are learning beyond the traditional systems. So you find them as the world is shifting into technology, as the world has shifted into technology, sorry, and then it has now is shifting into artificial intelligence. These are people who have found themselves in that system. They are learning either to disrupt, create more innovations, think creatively, or the second group of people are those who are learning to flow and work or maximize the new systems that are being created, right? So there are people who spend their time studying the new system, maximizing the new system, improving on the new system, advancing the new system. So you know traditional learning does not teach disruption, right? So you must reinvent yourself. One of the things that you must do is you must reinvent yourself. You must begin to think beyond traditional learning. What are the things? How can I improve myself? How can I get better? Even after having your PhD, after having your master's degree, your PhD, you need to begin to think beyond. You need to think dynamically. You don't have this fixed pattern of learning, this fixed pattern of thinking that you are not dynamic. I mean, there are people you find today. I was listening to I have a very popular podcast I listen to. Now, okay, take for example this guy Charlie Kirk that was recently murdered, right? This guy was a dropout, right? He was a dropout from school, but when you see him converse with people, when you see him interact, I mean, he interacts beyond the level of education supposedly. Even those people who are average students, I mean, on the level they could interact, they were not on his level when it comes to interaction. Why? Because this person, he had self-learned, he had self-educated himself to the extent that in a conversation with somebody who was a Harvard student, he did better than them, right? He could speak better than them. He could bring out more facts than they could. Why? Because he self-educated himself. This is a person who thinks in a dynamic way, who sees life beyond the four walls of education, of the class system of school or the traditional system of schooling, right? So we are not negating. I'm not trying to negate the school or the traditional school system. What I'm trying to tell us that the world is shifting from that rigid, fixed pattern and it is moving to a more dynamic pattern, right? So I have a friend who dropped out of school while I was in school. He dropped out and then he went fully into tech, right? He went fully into tech and began to work remotely, right? Began to work remotely from Nigeria, works for people in short, he recently worked for Oracle, right? All the way from Nigeria here. So, and I'm a lecturer, right? but but I mean, his impact, how much he has been able to earn, how much he has been able to create and innovate, is far beyond I who once maintained my traditional system of education. Although I'm shifting in mind right now, right? So, I mean, what he has been able to achieve and accomplish is so mesmerizing that you would you would you would wonder that This guy is a dropout too. Like he didn't. When I was asking him some time ago, he just said he said to me, he said, Dave, he said he felt he didn't feel himself in that system, right? He said he's somebody who thinks beyond that class. He thinks dynamically. Now, this guy was a mass comm student, a mass communication student, who then diverted to tech. Can can now? Okay, I, what I'm trying to say is, someone, take for example, now you study mass comm. Let's say you studied mass communication, right? Many of us will peg ourselves to nothing beyond communication, right? But then in this dynamic system of learning or education that we are talking about, you are not limited. You can Don't fix yourself in a in a particular point. Don't peg yourself. They say something, square balls don't fit in round holes, right?
Yes, sir.
But now square balls can fit anywhere, man. Right? So it depends on how dynamic you can get, right? It depends on how you are beginning to see the world. It depends on how you are seeing, the world. You need to see the world from a more dynamic system. Don't see yourself from, if don't have this fixed mindset, this fixed pattern of life, right? So that's what I'm trying to communicate, right? The traditional learning does not teach disruption. So that's why you go from primary school, basic education, and all the way to college. And when you get to college or the university, I mean, they train you for a job system. You're being trained for a job system after your schooling. They teach you how to write a proposal, how to write an application, how
Yeah.
to your CV and all of that. But like I said, competence is beyond degrees now. Competence is beyond how well you can, right? How well you read, and if you had a first class. Competence has shifted all the way to the data or the information you have and what you can do with that information. There are many people out there who are succeeding today who did not see the four walls of classroom, who even dropped out of the four walls of classroom, but they are doing extremely well with the data and information that is all available in the world today. Now, there's something I want us to point out before I want to point towards before I just round off briefly. Education, before it moved to a more rigid system, more fixed system, was in those old times. If they saw that somebody knew something, right, then you can just take your child to learn under that person, which we call apprenticeship in Africa, right? So apprenticeship means this person is good at this thing. You come and learn from this person, gain tutelage from this person. You're trained in that way. Doctors, that was how doctors got their education as well. That was how everyone got their education. Paul in the scripture was a lawyer. He was a law. He knew the law, but he learned under a man called Gamaliel, right? So I mean, Plato learned under, what's his name? Please remind me. Plato, the philosopher. No, those cadres of philosophers all learned under themselves like that. Socrates, Plato, they all learned. Socrates taught Plato. Plato taught all just like that. So that was the kind of system of education at that time, until there was now a rigid curriculum, a syllabus, class system that was put in place, right? So, but then the world is now shifting back to that system of education and embracing dynamism. The world is now embracing a dynamic system of learning. Now, the point of everything I'm trying to say now is you must rewire and remap your mind for a dynamic approach. You must rewire and remap your mind for a dynamic approach, right? Don't say that you are not succeeding. There are many areas that you can succeed. All you just need to do is self-learn. So the point of everything is you must self-educate yourself. You must self-learn. And this is how you find dignity and true freedom in life. When you self-learn, when you self-educate, you fulfill one of the greatest, deepest desires of humanity, which is dignity and independence. Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Please, guys, let's celebrate Mr. David Lawal. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. We're so grateful.